The Willoughbys is another Netflix movie that I hardly knew about before I decided to watch it. At first glance, I almost thought it was a movie made by Aardman, with the sort of claymation character models in particular giving the most vibes, but no, this movie was done by Bronze Studios, who I've heard next to nothing about and don't even know what other kind of movies they've worked on. Well, regardless, I wanted to see if this movie was good or not, as much like Klaus and Over the Moon, I heard a multitude of people telling me that it was really good. Just keep in mind that I know this movie's based on a book, but I haven't read the book, so anything I choose to say to critique in this movie is more so regarding the movie on its own. So I sat down and watched it for myself, and I think I liked it enough. Keep in mind there's some stuff to like about it, but I don't know if I'd put it on the same level as Klaus and Over the Moon. The story, as simple and lighthearted as I can best describe, centers on a group of children known as the Willoughbys. They want to orphan themselves because their parents are literally monsters who don't even care about them even when they're born, so they try to send them on a vacation that will literally kill them. Yeah, I was lying about the lighthearted story. This is actually some pretty grim stuff. I almost thought this movie was going to be made for adults, but no, it's still sort of made for kids. It has the same beats and gags you'd expect in a kids movie, but is it enough to make it enjoyable? Well, since I was talking about the animation earlier, I think it's best to start with that. It's really good. Sure, the characters look straight out of an Aardman or Leica movie, but it does still look nice. And not only do the characters look like claymation models, but even how they move contemplates that. I'm glad we're living in a world where studios are beginning to experiment with what animation can do, whether it's this or Klaus or Into the Spider-Verse. I love how experimental studios are becoming so that it can further give their movies a unique style. The voice acting is also pretty good. It's great to hear Maya Rudolph again in a movie that doesn't suck. I always like hearing Ricky Gervais in these movies for some reason, and even Will Forte, despite how much I hated his performance in Scoob, does a much better job in this movie. The writing is also pretty good. I'm always a sucker for those kids movies that can have a very cynical tone to it as long as it's done well, and for the most part, the rather dark jokes can be pretty funny. The parents especially managed to get a lot of laughs out of me considering how horrible they are, but I also know that they're aware of how horrible they can be and just ham it up throughout the film. But the weird thing is, that's sort of as far as I can go in terms of things I liked. Not to say there's parts of this movie that are downright terrible, they just prevent the movie from being amazing. Even though I praised the dark writing for the characters, I still found it a bit odd that they hated the first child they got, and yet they still kept having children. Like I said, it's still pretty funny just how horribly they act towards them, but if they hate their own children, then why do they keep having them? Then again, maybe they had these kids by accident. I don't know, maybe if they hinted that's the reason they had kids, like if they said the kids were an accident, then okay. And that's sort of a weird problem I have with the movie in general. While most of it is really funny and zany and all sorts of things, at points I feel it can get in the way of the heart of it. And whenever this movie does attempt to have more emotional moments, they are scaled back a lot. And I don't have a problem with a comedy scaling back on the emotion, there's a reason they're called comedies, but this movie tries to have its cake and eat it too, having both emotional moments and comedy throughout. And because the movie focuses too hard on being funny, even though it is really funny, it makes the emotional moments feel bogged down in comparison. Again, I will embrace a pure comedy, but not when it tries to mix both and downscale one element. Other animated movies can do a better job of blending them together because they aren't as hell-bent on being funny. Yes, comedy movies don't need big emotional moments, but because this movie has a lot of instances of trying to do that, they don't come out as strong as they should have. Also, even though I like hearing Ricky Gervais in these movies, I think his narration in this one is actually kind of annoying. I already found it pointless that they gave him a character, a cat who doesn't even serve that much to the family, but he narrates a lot in this movie, especially in situations where the audience can already figure out what's going on. It works as an introduction to the story, but every time there's a transition, we hear Gervais narrating again, and I have to ask, what's the point of hearing someone narrate something that the audience just saw? It gets annoying really quickly. So overall, I did still like the Willoughbys despite highlight my grievances with it. The animation is dazzling, the characters are likable and sweet, the writing is really funny, and the story was simple yet easy to understand. I just wish this movie had more time to focus on the heart of it, and if it wasn't scaled back so much. Maybe if they had cut out the stupid narration scenes or something, maybe this could have given the filmmakers more time to experiment with it. As is, it's still enjoyable and I absolutely recommend it. I would just suggest going into it with an emphasis on the humor, because that's really what most of the movie is. If that's what you're looking for, then I think you'll have a fun time.